all, thanks for all coming. Appreciate your commitment to the grassroots. I think most trade unions have got the problems at the grassroots, where the branches aren't organising, they're not meeting, they're not transparent, they're not accountable in their financial methods. Any sort of dissent is covered by threats or isolation. So while I welcome the commitment to the grassroots, how are you going to police that the resources that come down to the grassroots are going to be used properly and it's going to be democratic at that level?
Just take another question you wanted to ask about.
Yeah, this sort of leads on but different grassroots. I want to ask about the role of regional officers and availability. I come from an NHS background for 35 years. Some colleagues of mine were victimised very badly by very senior managers in a primary care trust who went to the region, no workplace reps or ones that had been in post a week or two, not able at all to respond to, victimisation by chief executives, different playing field, went to the regional office to request support from an officer and were told the regional officers do not support members anymore. These were nurses who were struggling, whose backs against the wall. They were told the regional officer who covers that area just now does strategic work. That must not be one member of staff, that was a whole team of them. They could not get any support at disciplinary hearings from anybody with the expertise and the ability to support them, and they were crushed. So the NHS has lost some very excellent nurses because of that. So what are the candidates going to do to ensure that representation is available for people at basic levels when they need it?
Steve, before, can I just put a little added to that, regional officers? As you know, I work for the NHS. When I tried to contact my regional officer, now I'm based at Skelmersdale, I work for Central Lancashire PCT. My regional officer was in Whitehaven.
Right, I will spend a bit longer this time. First of all, Jerry is wrong. There is cooperation within union organisations, certainly within the NHS. And our campaigns within the NHS endeavour to involve all the other unions within the NHS. The NHS has a problem because there are hundreds of unions with it, well not hundreds, there are many unions representing staff within the NHS, which makes things very difficult. And you get groups like the RCN who are only interested in the nurses and they won't discuss other problems. And that's very bad. And that's an issue. When we have got campaigns going that we're putting out feelers to other unions, which Gail has led on, it is the Unison, I shouldn't say this, you better edit this out, it's Unison and the RCN who are backed off from cooperating with us. And that is a real problem. So I don't agree with Jerry that combined campaigns don't work, or haven't worked.
I didn't say that.
You said something similar to that. More importantly, this question of the officers, yes, I agree that's a problem, and I know Gail is aware of that problem. I will make a bit of an apology. One of my officers wears about 3 hats, including a national role, and he is at his wit's end, and that is wrong. We do make representations within the Health Service Committee up through, because Gail's responsible for the Health Service, that this is not acceptable, and she is taking that on board. And my belief is that if she was elected, that is one of the areas she would take very seriously, particularly as we've rightly said, and we're all saying it, the next couple of years are going to be a nightmare for the NHS. The American companies are looking at this country to take on management of the NHS. And once they get in, can you imagine what's union situations like in America? Think about it. When they go in, they are ruthless, and we're going to have a heck of a fight. And I'm sure the other candidates would agree with me on that. I know Gail has a big heart for the NHS. She knows it. She's worked with us for a long time. And I know she will take those issues very seriously and do her damnedest to try and correct them. There was a question about feeding back to the grassroots. Again, I can only say that I know, for me personally, she has given me opportunities to develop my skills, and I've seen it with other people. And that, I think, is where a General Secretary is really good. And General Secretaries who know their membership and can support their membership, I will support. Sure.
Well, I know we're not going to have a battle on who's got the biggest heart for the NHS. I mean, you could...
No, we shouldn't.
No. We've got 2 offices in Bristol since we've merged with the G&G. You heard my views earlier about the way that our union is run like a business. And I think this begins to answer your problem. It is run like a business and not a member-led, member-controlled union where the officers provide for the members. And that's, I think, part of the problem is appointment of officers. But we got 2 offices in Bristol. One was the T&G and one was the old Amicus. T&G right in the centre of Bristol, near the railway station, accessible. Other groups used to hire rooms, even the RMT, talking about Bob Crow, there's a link there from the last question, used to hire. So we'd actually cover some costs for the upkeep of the building. Which one did we close? Which one did we sell? The one in the centre of town is accessible to members, or the one on the edge of town, which if you haven't got a car you could never get to? And lo and behold, when I was in Swansea the other day at a branch, and if Len says this person supports him and that person supports him, well, I'm glad I got the support of the branch that night and they nominated me. But when I went to Swansea, I saw exactly the same. Beautiful building in the centre of town. One, it was accessible. One, our members knew where they could find people if they had a problem. That's the one this closing, our property portfolio, selling it off, keeping the ones on the edge of town, the inaccessible ones. I think the accountability is part of the problem. I think members should elect officials so that they are accessible and accountable to members, and you know them. Actually, you haven't got an officer. The union appoints them, and then they direct them to where they are. And you don't know who yours is going to be from 1 week or 1 month to the next. With fear or favour or promotion, they could be anywhere. You work up a relationship and they're gone. I believe wholeheartedly in elections rather than appointments. On the availability side of things, strategic officials, I really don't know. I don't recognise the word, but what I do believe is there is not enough hands-on availability of officers to members. Now, I am not anti-officer. Let me make that absolutely clear. I think if officers were freed up to have more contact with members, they'd actually enjoy the job a bit more. I think some people could get themselves into a problem where this union would be fantastic if it weren't for members with all the problems they have, you know. It's a mindset that develops, isn't it? You're appointed, you're distant, branches are dumbed down, you run as a business, another merger which makes you bigger but not stronger, you see BA, you see a problem, you see another factory closure, you see another fight that was actually just a campaign and a closure, and it all adds to only 10% voting. It adds to more empty seats in this room rather than full seats in this room. It adds to the fact that you're still in the union, but do you want to become a rep? Well, no, not really. My mate was a rep. He got victimised. He went to the solicitor, said you haven't got a 50% chance. They didn't take up his case. It all leads somewhere. It begins somewhere and it ends somewhere. Turn the pyramid of this top-down bureaucratic union, however good or bad or in between they are, they should be elected, available and accountable on the other end of the phone. If you can't get to an officer, they should come to you. You pay. We pay. It's our union. We want it back.
Jim, the question about branches, and of course it all begins somewhere, and it begins at our branches, and you're right. Part of the reason that I made the point in my presentation about this election being about what kind of union do you want Unite to be, is to make certain that the vibrancy in our branches is stimulated once more. And so the idea, as I said, that anybody who has a different point of view from that of the leadership somehow has to fear being dealt with is the type of union culture that I abhor. That's why I am arguing for the type of open, free, democratic debate and discussion within our union at every single level, stimulating branches again, making branches fit for purpose. Our rule book talks about workplace branches. Not a one-size-fits-all. You can't have a one-size-fits-all within a union like Unite, but branches that where they are based on workplaces and where that's sustainable, then we are, according to our rule book, supposed to move towards that. Areas where branches are active and vibrant, covering a geographical area, should be supported also. How do you do that? You do that by making resources available, not taking resources away. Of course, Jerry's right that there's a danger that one trips into another and that apathy becomes the rule. And that's one of the things that we have to fight against. We have to resurrect a vibrancy at the grassroots level. I'm committed to making certain that all our branches receive, all our branches, not T&G versus Amicus, but all Unite branches should receive 10% branch administration back. Not to go in the back pockets of a branch secretary, but so that it can be used, in order to generate a vibrancy once more within our branch, making certain that people take advantage of the structures that are there, the constitutional structures that bring about accountability. Because, of course, accountability is absolutely central to everything we do. Now, Jerry's a passionate believer in the election of full-time officials. He sees that as the way to achieve accountability. I say that that shouldn't be seen as a panacea. We've had, in fact, Peter can tell you, where we had election of officials in the AEU, but it never meant that the best person got the job. It never meant that women and black and ethnic people were properly represented. It never meant that the individual was a good servicing officer to all of the members if he was just, or she was just, interested in making certain that the big branches, the big battalions, were looked after. Now, I don't know where the vibrancy and demand is within our union is for election of officials, but by all means, let's have the debate about it. Let's consider the arguments, because there are arguments on both sides which are weighted arguments and need genuine consideration. What I say is that irrespective of whether it's appointed or elected officials, the only way that you can have genuine accountability is through our structures, so that the disgraceful situation that happened to you should not happen. And by the way, you tell me the incident after we finish this meeting, and I'll investigate it. But because for any of our members to be told that there isn't a regional officer available because they now do strategic work is a damn disgrace, and it certainly will not happen under my leadership as General Secretary. Our officers are there to provide a service to you and to make certain that they do their best. By the way, we meet at the very point in time whereby we are losing more officers, losing more staff, closing buildings. And incidentally, Jerry, you're wrong about the Bristol situation, but I agree 100%. All of our constituent unions were responsible, including the T&G, of trying to close down buildings that were accessible in the centre of our cities and towns and moving them to posh buildings on quaysides where members couldn't get to. I opposed it then, I oppose it now, and as General Secretary I will put our buildings back in the hearts of our cities and towns so that they're accessible to our members. Instead of reducing officers, we should be looking to channel more of our resources at the sharp end, as I said before, making certain that you have availability of officers, of staff, of buildings, of legal provisions, of educational facilities, all of the things that you need at the cold face. Because anybody who tries to tell you that a union as diverse as ours can be run from an office in London is simply plain wrong. That's why it has to be local, regional and industrial sectors that determine what they require. It's about getting the balance right, and it's about making certain that we've got proper resources where those resources are needed, and that we don't experience the disgraceful example that we've just had about our members being in need and nobody there to respond to them. I will stop that with a proper, disciplined approach, making certain that the culture that is in our union is one whereby when members require something, and if members demand something through the constitutional machinery, if there's the opportunity for them to raise complaints and they feel that this is their union and their voice is going to be listened to, then the culture will very quickly change and people won't be turning good members away like they did with you.